All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I just had about 30 minutes of conversation with the guest, and it was profound. I'm actually so upset that we weren't recording, but right before we get into this episode, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Carrie Weidenbach. Carrie, let's start this episode. We have to do a little bit of an expedited version because we only have about 30 minutes, but let's start it the way that we start all of my episodes. I want you to take me all the way back where you were born and raised, what you were like as a young girl, like what was the, ideology in your home? What was your family life like? What were the things that were going to kind of shape you for how to move forward in the world? And then let's slowly unveil your story to where we are today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I grew up in Kalamazoo on a pretty good-sized farm. So we had a dairy farm with 120 head of cattle. We had an equestrian center where my aunt taught, horse riding lessons, dressage, things like that. We farmed about 400 acres. So I have 5 brothers and sisters. I am the second oldest in the family. So it was a big, crazy family with one bathroom, which was nutty. Like, I can't even imagine today that, 8 people in a house with one bathroom. But that's how it was, and we totally figured it out.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, even just hearing you say that was a circus in itself in your childhood.
Yeah.
So what are the things you think you pulled from growing up on a farm? So many people, I've interviewed several women that when they were young, they grew up on a farm, or men, and they say that lifestyle, the hard work, the responsibility, the character, were integral parts of their growth trajectory throughout life. What were the things that you think you pulled from that environment? Do you have the traditional family home, mother and father were married, good, loving environment? And were there any other major influences that shaped you as a young woman, whether it be athletics or other influences?
So, I mean, what you said is so true. You get this work ethic because when you live on a farm, there's things that you just have to do. And it doesn't matter if the cows get out in the middle of the night, you're getting up and you're putting the cows back in. You're shoveling crap, literally. And you just have to do that. But you have these experiences that really allow you to be brave in life, I think. So, you're driving tractor at 12, 13, 14 years old, pulling huge, hay wagons and stuff. And, like I said, those things teach you to be brave. It teaches you to try things that you never thought you would have tried at a really young age. Something that really shaped my life, I think, and I didn't realize it until I was older, but I always knew it was happening. My dad fought in Vietnam, and I think I didn't know it then. You don't know this when you're a young kid, but I'm sure he had PTSD and he suffered from depression. My mother also suffered from depression. When I was 2 or 3 years old, she suffered a miscarriage. And she was hospitalized in an institution for a month or 2. I don't know how long. We don't talk about it, but I know what happened. And I imagine as a 2-year-old that made a difference in my life. So, I grew up watching my parents struggle. We never had a lot of money. There was, government cheese and hand-me-down clothes and a lot of that. So there was always sort of a feeling of lack in the house, but my parents were wonderful, loving parents, and we had this great adventure growing up on the farm, and I really appreciated that. We also had a lot of outside influences. So my dad is one of 9 kids, and my mom is one of 7 kids, and I'm one of 6 kids. Like, we had massive gatherings and so many like cool outside influences. So in my dad's family, there was a foreign exchange student from Guatemala that I always grew up with, my Uncle Eddie. So when I was 16, there was an opportunity at school to be an exchange student. And this was something familiar to me. So I signed up for it without even asking my parents because I knew they would be cool with it. So when I was 16 years old, I ended up living in Argentina for an entire year. I literally just like got on a plane and went to Argentina.
Wow. I got to stop you for a second because, okay, you just alluded to it. One of the main ways to be able to be brave in this life is to realize that you are far more competent than you realized. And the way you do that is by doing things that are a little bit beyond your level and then acquiring competency and confidence and realizing like, you know what, I can do a lot more than I think. So growing up on that farm and finding out that like, yeah, is it dangerous to drive a tractor as a kid? Sure. But you know what? I was encouraged. I was supported. I was pushed in a gentle manner. But it's like, hey, that's what you do. And you learn to be able to trust yourself. And that type of confidence has probably permeated much of your adult life and much of your adventure. The fact that you were willing to do that and you're going to leave the country and broaden your horizons, that's incredible. And what that probably did for your psychology, for your worldview, for your willingness to take on the unknown was probably paramount to who you are today. So you leave the country. Now all of a sudden you were surrounded by this environment that was very familiar to you before. You know, you know, you're probably from a smaller town. You kind of know all the people in your environment to like, hey, you're in the big world now. What were the most profound realizations, growth moments, experiences, whether positive or negative, that you think made you into a more well-rounded person?
Yeah, so living that year in Argentina, so I didn't speak Spanish. I never even studied Spanish. I studied French in high school, but I didn't get matched up with a French family. I got matched up in Argentina, so I did not speak Spanish, and my host family did not speak English. There was only one girl in my high school that spoke English, so I literally had to learn the language from listening and studying every day. And, you know, I would come home from school every day, and each day my host mom would say, like, ¿Qué existo en el colegio? And I would be like, I don't know. But eventually, like, I realized she's asking me what I did in school and how it was. And, like, you just pick that up. So I learned Spanish like a child just from, like, listening and learning and being in the country. And I realized I gained a lot of empathy for what it's like to live in another country, what it's like to be there and not speak the language, to have people judge you, to have people think that you're an idiot because you don't speak the language. Like, so I get that feeling. I know what that's like. And it was such a cool experience for me to realize how different people are in the world, how different people's experiences are, that you don't necessarily have to live this American lifestyle and to have all this stuff to be happy, that you can be really happy with a lot less. And what matters is how you show up in the world.
100%. And I think that's such a good eye-opening experience for you. And I experienced something very similar the first time I went to Brazil. And it's like all of a sudden you're the one that doesn't know how to formulate a sentence for what your needs are. And you're like you learn some basic sayings or like como se dice, and then you can ask and then you have to rely on the generosity and kindness of others to help you through the experience, or you just have to make it work. And you know what? It gives you a profound respect for people that are willing to do that. And America is like, in a lot of the parts of the world, we're considered like a beacon of hope, and people want to come to our country and many other countries more than a lot of places on the map. And if we had a little bit more of that compassion for how difficult that is, because we are in a blessed opportunity, we are in an incredible spot. There's a lot of darkness in other places, and it's like we need to see ourselves in the people that are trying to assimilate. You know what I mean? That's what I think you were alluding to there. And you were that one when you were in Argentina. So it's like it gave you such a proper perspective. Were there any other, like, was your family religious? Were there other things that shaped you as a young woman or shaped your perspectives and things like that? Because a lot of the times your home life makes such an impact on the way that you then perceive the world and the lenses through which you see.
Yeah, absolutely. So my family was and is pretty religious. My mother was raised Catholic, very Catholic. My father was Methodist. And because my mother felt so strongly about her religion, we always practiced Catholicism. I went to Catholic school. We did all of those things. But when I went to college, I first started at Western. I had a world religions class. And I just fell in love with that, like learning all the different religions around the world. And again, seeing how different people experience and look at their faith differently. And so I have a very strong sense of faith, but I'm more open and accepting of other people's beliefs. And I find even though I practice Christianity and I love Jesus and I feel very strongly about it, I learn more about my faith through other people's faith. And that's a value that I carry forward that I really appreciate. And so I went to college at Western and then ended up graduating from Michigan State. I had a degree in international business and business administration, went straight into the workforce. And
at this point, what did you want to become? Like, what were you aiming at? You got through college, you went for international business, which there's already a huge leap in the story. That's incredible. And that's a great starting point. What was your aim at? What did you think you were going to do for the rest of your life at that point?
So one of the things that you and I kind of talked about is we tend to learn from opposites in our life. We experience something and we think, I don't want that. I want my life to be different than what it was. And so growing up with that poverty and that sense of lack, I had this thought of, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be different than the life my parents lived. I'm going to make this happen. I am never going to be without. So I wanted to be someone in business. I wanted to be a successful person. So I pushed it, right? And I wanted to climb that corporate ladder. And in my first jobs, I got this experience of technology, kind of doing technological projects, launching software. And I was like, ooh, I like this. I like getting stuff done. So I continued down that path. I worked in technology at Ford. I was an IT buyer and bought lots of technology. I went on to learn how to do project management for software, launching big, complicated systems and software, and kind of grew up in that space. So eventually I started to work in agencies that provided technology to other companies, built websites, and started to develop this career in e-commerce, selling things online.
And it sounds like you have a lot of fulfillment for this point. Like the way you're reflecting on it sounds like you were very happy with your trajectory up to a certain point. Like, did you feel fulfilled doing what you were doing? Were you happy with your, climbing of the corporate ladder? I'm sure you're learning so much about people and business and relationship and all the professional skills. But did you feel really good at that point of your story, or were you knowing?
I did generally feel good. I thought it was really exciting, and I think for a lot of people or a lot of women, right? When I became a mother, when I got married, some of that started to change, right? Because now I had this dual responsibility of raising my kids and being this career person, but.
And can you love your career as much as you love your children and being a mother? That is a very difficult thing that a lot of women struggle with.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of women that go AWOL from their career and say, no, like I am here to be a mother. And then the other extreme is sometimes they are not much of a mother because they're like, yeah, but I'm on this corporate journey. How did you balance that? What told you was how do you know what decisions to make? Because that had to be complex.
It was very complex. And I'll be really honest, I leaned toward the career side because I think it stemmed from that sense of lack and not wanting to fail outwardly. And so I pushed a little bit harder on the career side and started getting into management and upper levels of of management and directors and doing that kind of stuff. And
did your fulfillment grow as you grew, or did you get more and more of the daunting, like, I'm separating more from my children?
yeah, well, it got to be a lot. So I worked for this really cool company. It was actually in Springfield, Missouri, and I was their project management director, and then they gave me a promotion, and I was the chief operating officer of this company. And it was remote, so I would travel to Missouri regularly and leave my kids. And my husband got kind of used to this pattern in my career where I would travel and he would have to take care of the kids, and then I'd come back and really try to do a lot of it. And eventually this company promoted me they wanted me to be president of the company. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have it all now.
Tip of the iceberg.
I've got my beautiful house and my handsome husband and my 2 kids, and I'm president of this company. And I'm like, yes, I've made it. I've done it. Like I had this plaque on my desk, the desk of the president, because I was remote before anybody was. And I had the plaque on my desk, and I'd be like, oh yeah, And I felt so fulfilled, but all my fulfillment was exterior things, right? It was all my accomplishments on the outside. It was my handsome children and this big job and this title. But looking back on the inside, I was lacking foundation. I didn't know where I stood. I didn't know what my real values were. I was just like on this track pushing. And it all started crumbling.
Wow. So one more question during this period, because like your whole story has this parallel of like expanding your horizons, pushing the level, climbing to the next thing. And it probably is. If you go all the way back to childhood, it's probably from that I witnessed struggle. I saw how tough it can be. I will not have that, and I'm not going to allow that. So you were always willing to go and chase the next big thing, the next big level, the next big promotion. What makes sure that I'm as far from that fear and danger as possible?
Right.
What did your family life look like at the time? Like, did your husband work? Does he have his own career? If so, how are the children growing up in the home? And like, how were you able to balance? You got to president of a major company. You worked your way from COO to president. Did your husband work, et cetera? And did that take a major strain on your family? And was that maybe a vital thing that finally, like, something has to snap you out of it? Like, generally, before you make any major life change, you have to get to the precipice of that change, which is there's enough stimulus in a direction that says, hey, we are missing something here. Or what I thought would come with this has not fully shown up, and I need to course correct before it's too late. Walk me through that. What did the family dynamic look like? And then what finally inspired the change?
So my husband worked full time. Also, we both worked. We partied way too much. So that was our coping mechanism. There was a decent amount of alcohol. My children, we would spend time with the children and we would do fun stuff. Like, we had a good family dynamic, but it wasn't a strong family dynamic. There wasn't like a lot of strong foundation there. There was too much prioritization on, again, this outward stuff that we were doing. So about 6 months into being president of this company, the owner came to me and said, Carrie, I know I promised you equity in this company. He's like, but I think something's not right. I'm not feeling good about you and your capabilities to do this. And it shook me to the core. I didn't have enough self-worth without all that outside intrinsic stuff to say, nope, I'm good inside. I can do this. I'm capable. It messed with me. And it started to like...
It sounds like this led to a dark chapter or a rock bottom or a realization or awakening period. And I feel like this is the next pivotal part, because a lot of people will have moments like this in their life that they're paramount. They're where you find yourself. It's where you strip out the excess layers, you peel back to who you actually are, and then if done correctly, can put you onto the most beautiful, fulfilling, proper track, or it can lead you to hell. It can lead you to true, suffering and bitterness and resentfulness and hatred outward, and it's all of these people's fault. What did you experience in those times? How did you put the pieces back together? And this probably put you to where you are now. Had that not happened, we're not sitting here today with where you currently are. If you're willing to walk through that dark period a little bit, I think some of the magic in your story is going to come from this part.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was really a process. So it was about 6 months of coming apart in that presidency. And again, too much alcohol, not sleeping, lots of stress, not doing well. And eventually we parted ways and I left the company, and I was broken. I said, I'm going to take a couple months and stay home with my kids, but I was so fearful and feeling incompetent and I'd never stayed home with my kids before. I'd never done that. And even that felt scary to me. But, I've always been sort of the primary provider in the family. So I had to pick myself back up and be like, nope, I have to keep moving forward. And e-commerce and agency life was what I knew. So I kept doing that, but I started digging. And I started reading and looking and saying oh no, something's not right. I'm broken. And I started getting underneath there and figuring it out and learning.
So you would say you started to climb out of being on rock bottom just from a sense of purpose that hey, this is my responsibility.
Yeah. I really did. I took an Enneagram quiz, which is this personality quiz, and it's one of the unique ones that'll tell you if you're operating from the non-resourceful aspects of your personality versus the positive, resourceful aspects. And it said, no, you're kind of broken. And I knew it. I knew it. So it set me down this path of seeking and getting better and figuring it out. Meanwhile, I'm still kind of doing the same stuff, but I started meditating. And that was okay, this is a little bit better. I started doing more yoga, and it's okay, this is a little bit better. So I kept little by little moving forward, but I kept repeating a lot of the same patterns, and I ended up again being vice president for a company in Manhattan, big software stuff. And it's funny because I talk about the drinking problem. My client was AB InBev, the largest brewery in the world, right? So this happens all the time in life. You're struggling with something that is kind of off, and God goes, oh yeah? I'm going to put you right in front of that. So I traveled all over the globe building the most massive e-commerce websites for one of the largest companies in the world that sold beer.
That's unbelievable. It's almost like if you were going to write a hero's story or a hero's journey, that is what happens. You have to confront the dragon. You have to face the ultimate demon in your life, or the most difficult thing. Because I was about to address it. It's funny that you said that. I was going to say, you started to meditate. You started to do yoga. But you're not addressing, if you're drinking alcohol all the time, it's poisoning you and it's making you a lesser version of yourself. Why is that not on the chopping block? Why are you not sitting? And it is a coping mechanism. And a lot of people, they work these extremely high stress lives, and they have all of these things, and they just need an escape from it to recharge the battery enough to go back through it, instead of recognizing that, because to stop alcohol too would cause a whole nother struggle. And it's why do I want to compound my struggle when I'm trying to get a better state? Well, because the better life is on the other side of that struggle. Yes, it's difficult, but so is everything else you've done. Everything you've done in that life, to get to a president of a company was difficult. Better life is generally on the other side of our fears, our problems, our difficulties. And the universe blessed you. The universe said, here it is in the most primitive form. You are going to be a representative for this toxic industry, right? Good luck conquering this.
Yeah.
Are there any other things besides yoga and meditation that you think were pivotal or integral parts of your success? And then when did you finally face the ultimate thing, which is do I have a drinking problem? Am I doing too much of this? And then how do you start to take on that battle?
Yeah. So, I mean, I knew it, but maybe I'm a slow learner. It took me 4 years of working for this company, I built a massive $8 million team with 6 teams and 42 people. Like I grew it. And again, I'm learning and I'm getting better, but I'm still not fixing all of my problems. And my sister is one of my best friends. She's my older sister. One day just happens to send me this video of Amy Grant. Do you know Amy Grant at all?
I've heard of that name, but I can't
You're
put a
too
face.
young. So from the 90s, she was a pop singer, Christian singer, very popular. And it's this video of Amy Grant talking about this wellness technology, this brain technology. And my sister and I both used to listen to Amy Grant when we were kids. Like, we loved her. And so she is talking about this brain wellness technology that helped her niece overcome addiction. And
wait, so at this point, you know that you're addicted to alcohol and that you have a problem, because otherwise, why would it correlate so strongly into your life?
Right. And I also knew that I had these deep stress patterns, this anxiety that I had built up, that I had been living in these stressful patterns, and I could not relax. I'd go on vacation and I'd still be high-strung from work. So I'm watching this video. Amy Grant's talking about this. And the reason my sister sent it to me was for her foster daughter that has behavioral issues. But I was like, Jenny, maybe we need this. Maybe we have to try this thing. But there weren't any centers around here. This technology is called Cereset, and it's a holistic brain relaxing technology. There weren't any centers around here. So my sister and I decided to take a trip all the way to Scottsdale, Arizona to have this process done. Neither my sister and I slept well. Neither of us dealt with stress well. And we're like, we're going to try this and see if this could make a difference in our lives. And in order to do the process, you have to stop drinking for 25 days.
That's incredible. Like, incredible. And we were lightly talking before the podcast about this, and I'm so honestly sad that I didn't capture my original reactions, because normally I was just waiting for a podcast to produce before we could start. And you absolutely blew me away with what you were telling me about this technology. For someone that has never heard of this before, give me like an overview, but in simplistic enough terms that someone that's not familiar with psychology or like maybe brain chemistry or things like that can understand what you're saying. Because what you said to me was one of the most profound statements I have ever heard on like internal healing of the mind. So explain the technology.
Yeah, so it's so cool. So basically what they do is they put high-resolution sensors on the brain that can detect the brain waves and determine where there's imbalances or where the brain is out of harmony. And then they feed those brain waves into their computer algorithms, and those algorithms produce a musical echo of your actual brainwaves in real time. And it's just like when a kid is playing the piano and they miss a note, you know that they've played something wrong. So when your brain hears itself, it recognizes right away where it's out of balance, where it's out of harmony, where something is wrong, and it creates neuroplasticity to self-correct.
Yeah, so if you don't understand what she's saying, because some of the terminology there, that is one of the most profound statements I have ever heard on mental health ever. Neuroplasticity is the ability for your brain to create new pathways and synapses through which your electrons will fire, and basically like your thoughts and your personality, everything can be shaped differently if your brain starts corresponding to this stimulus. And what you're saying is, by allowing your brain to hear the audio recreation echo, whatever you'd like to call it, it is able to recognize that there's a problem and then adjust it in real time. That is so unbelievable. And now the part that I started to do a follow-up right before I was like, okay, we got to stop talking so that we can have this dialogue on the podcast, is in the moment, your brain can probably say, okay, that's wrong. I need to switch my nervous system. I'm staying in fight or flight, or I'm like not allowing myself to operate like a healthy human being, and that's a crucial thing for everybody. But on sustainability, you were trying to explain to me how it creates like a window or a gap, or it makes you able to recognize the patterns in the future to self-regulate. Is this a treatment that is a short time, do it a couple times, your brain then takes it as a tool and can use it in your regular life? Is this an ongoing treatment that people go through? Is it, just kind of explain it a little bit more, like someone heard you say that on a podcast, they know they're living in that state that you had referenced earlier. They want to get their brain to start snapping out and realizing it's like, there's something wrong. There's a problem. It's like we're identifying, okay, I have an issue and I want to fix it. And your brain has the ability to fix it. Your brain's a miracle, right? But how do they get lasting results and not have to constantly need that type of stimulus?
Yeah. So I did 5 sessions in Arizona. And after those 5 sessions, it really was life-changing for me. Like, I could feel a difference. I could go to work and something bad would happen that would normally trigger me, but I could recognize it and go, oh, here's this stressful thing. I don't have to carry that anymore. That doesn't have to weigh me down. And I'd go home and I'd dance in the kitchen with my children.
So it just allowed you to be the observer of your mind instead of just the reactive mind, is what I'm like. From a psychological perspective, you're basically getting distance. So it's not just stimulus, reaction, lasting stress. You're able to go, oh, I'm observing the way that this is taking place, like what meditation seeks to do, what yoga seeks to do. You're creating that gap. So you only did 5 sessions ever, and it had a permanent impact on you going forward, or you went back for further treatment? Or
So I only did those 5 sessions, and I noticed such a big difference. I just felt this lightness in me. On the second day, I was sleeping through the night, not taking melatonin, not taking Xanax anymore. Again, not drinking.
So you were on prescription, you had Xanax and you were out self-medicating, you were taking melatonin, and you were off all of these things after 5 treatments of this to allow your brain to recognize its problems.
Yeah. And I felt good. I really felt good. And it's not like it took away the stress. The stress still happens, but I could just deal with it so differently.
No, stress, that's the thing that I tell so many people that struggle with anxiety and stress and problems. Like, the world is going to present you with those things for all of time. If you could snap your fingers and have a world that didn't produce stress, you'd probably be a much less version of yourself, because stress is an opportunity to grow. Stress is oftentimes a positive force. Stress allows you to elevate to a new level and raise to the occasion. And stress can be good, but you have to be able to handle it, and you have to recognize how to grow yourself, and when it's positive or when it's negative, when you're getting into bad patterns of thought or behavior or when they're productive, right? But with that being said, the only thing that I think that a general audience member that's listening to this might want to ask, I'm so sad we have to cut this podcast short. You have 1 minute left, so I'm going to ask you this question, is you had the variable of alcohol. And before that test, you had to go 25 days clean, which is also, if you take someone who has a problem with alcohol and you force them to have that period where for 25 days, no matter what hey, I'm going to give you $1 million if you stop drinking for 25 days, and they stop drinking, they will be a different person. They will be able to handle emotions differently. They will regulate differently. Their chemistry can start to change. They can get past those withdrawal symptoms. Do you think you experienced such a massive, profound thing maybe because of the combination of those events together? Or do you think if you took someone that had no alcohol problems, nothing, like they were horribly abused as a child, or their stress comes from something else, that they would have the same impact regardless if they simply sought this treatment?
So I knew I had a problem with alcohol. I'd given it up for 60 days before.
Oh, okay.
So
before you found this treatment.
Before I found this treatment. So I knew what that felt like. This was different.
I understand.
That 60 days was way harder than this time.
Well, that makes perfect sense. We hadn't clarified on the story, because I'm going like, okay, well, you made 2 massive changes there, not 1. Yeah. If you get off alcohol and you do this treatment, that's 2 things. And like, you want to have, in any observation of evidence for something, you always want to look at variability and like what variables did change. So, man, like, I want to talk to you for another hour, but I know you have a client. what I'd love to propose to you is the idea that maybe we've built your background and we've talked you up to this point, and I think a lot of people are going to watch this episode and they're going to want to know so much more. They're going to want to know more about what you do. They would love to hear about people that have gone through like major paradigm shifts by things like this. And I really think we could put together some incredible video content for anxiety is destroying countless people's lives. We have an epidemic in this country of people that do not realize that they are capable and can learn to be courageous and handle the world's stresses. And anything that can give them a tool to get that separation, to maybe even just have clarity of thought, to be able to find a better solution, to find out like this stimulus won't kill me. Fight or flight is trying to tell me that my life is at risk. And really, no, if I could journal, if I could write down the things that I need to solve, if I could go to my network and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, but like, can you help me solve this? They might just need that initial separation from the chaos to profoundly change their life forever. So I'd love to propose the idea. I know you drove a long time to be out here. I'm sorry that we got double booked today, but I'd love to maybe we do a part 2 where we just pick up from this treatment, how it's impacted your life, how you've seen it change the lives of other people. We break it down from a ton of different elements, and then we just talk about, what can we do to promote a healthier world, not only for us, but for our children and future generations.
That sounds great. And if people are curious, it's called Cereset, which is for Cerebrum Reset. So like cereset.com. You can check out the technology that I tried.
Wonderful. I will 100% be doing research on my own before you come back to speak because like I said, it's profound. And I've seen many things as a mentor and coach and as a man who struggled deeply myself that have changed people's lives like they couldn't even like if the future version of yourself could go back in time, you wouldn't even believe it's you. There'd be nothing you could do to convince yourself that you could be that much healthier of a mindset and state. But anything that moves people in that direction, I'd love to support. I'd love to spread awareness about. I'd love to, connect people with, etc. So it was a true pleasure to sit with you today, Carrie. I hope that, you continue to go further and further down this path, and hopefully society in general moves more to recognizing that positive mental health is one of the most important things you can ever do, not only for yourself, but in everyone you come in contact with. I have this funny shirt, and I'm going to wear it next time on our next podcast. I bought it as a joke. Final story, I'll let you get out of here. I saw a shirt that said influencer on the chest. And for all these young kids, they want to be social media influencers. And I picked it up to show my fiance, and I'm like, look at this, like influencer, like this is what these kids are seeking to be. But what they don't understand is every single human being on this earth is an influencer. And the way that you take care of yourself and the way that you self-regulate and the way that you show up for people and in your environments and in your emotional states, you directly influence the world around you. And if more people took it as a responsibility that like, I need to do everything in my power to make my influence on the world as positive as humanly possible, this world would be so much better because you don't know people's struggles. You don't know what they're going through. You don't have their perspective. You don't know the catastrophes that are affecting their life. But if you just show up and you create a positive influence on your environments, you are the influencer. You don't have to seek it out. You're already it. So anything that helps mental health, I'm on board with. I really enjoyed sitting with you today, although it was way more brief than I would have liked. And, hopefully we can schedule a part 2.
I would love to. Thanks for having me today.